For 20 consecutive seasons, that signature two-note gavel strike dictated the absolute rhythm of primetime television. But the brutal realities unfolding behind the jury box were far more merciless than any scripted conviction. In 2026, the truth remains chilling. From sudden political flights and hidden terminal battles to the heartbreaking final act of the precinct's greatest detective, this is the true Law and Order the reruns never showed. You probably spent countless Tuesday nights watching him chase down the worst criminals on the streets of New York. Before he became a legendary television detective, Christopher Noth was an unknown actor fighting for minor stage roles. At 35, he landed the part of Mike Logan. He spent 5 years playing a righteous cop. This character despised men who preyed on vulnerable women. He left the show after a fierce contract dispute. His career exploded shortly after his exit. He became a massive pop culture icon. His entire empire collapsed overnight in December 2021. Everything shattered in an instant. Multiple women came forward with devastating allegations of assault. The destruction of his public life was absolute. Television networks immediately fired him from his leading role on The Equalizer. His talent agency dropped him within a few hours. A pending $12 million buyout of his tequila brand was canceled. His network even went back into the editing room. They erased his flashback scenes from a highly anticipated finale. They scrubbed his existence from the franchise completely. The man spent his prime years pretending to lock up predators. Now he watches his legacy burn under those exact accusations. But a public downfall is one thing. The sudden flight of a veteran prosecutor is a completely different mystery. He possessed a Tony Award. He won multiple Emmys. He was widely respected as one of the most brilliant theatrical actors of his generation. Michael Moriarty joined the cast at 49 to play Executive Assistant District Attorney Ben Stone. He became the moral compass of the entire series. But the man delivering those perfectly calm, intellectual arguments in the courtroom was slowly unraveling behind the scenes. He spent his early years on the show fighting a severe battle with alcoholism. Then his quiet struggles exploded into a highly public meltdown. In 1994, he became convinced that the United States Attorney General was conspiring to censor television. He bought full-page newspaper ads to attack her. He went on talk shows, claiming the network was silencing him. Ultimately, he abruptly quit the highest-rated show on television. He declared himself a political exile and fled to Canada. The actor who built his legacy, playing a man of pure logic, threw away a multi-million-dollar empire over a conspiracy that existed only in his own mind. In the fall of 2002, a grieving father walked onto a New York television set to escape reality. Freddie Dalton Thompson was not a traditional actor looking for a big break. He was a sitting United States senator and a former Watergate committee lawyer. At 60 years old, he joined the cast to play District Attorney Arthur Branch. The conservative, hard-nosed character was essentially a mirror of his own political identity. He projected absolute authority to millions of viewers every week, but his private world was completely shattered. Just before he took the prestigious role, his 38-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, died suddenly from an accidental medication overdose. He filmed his very first episodes while actively mourning his child. 2 years later, the relentless cruelty of fate continued. Doctors quietly diagnosed him with lymphoma in 2004. He kept the deadly cancer a complete secret from the press for years. He continued to dominate the fictional courtroom while enduring grueling medical treatments behind closed doors. Then, in 2007, he abruptly walked away from the hit series. He did not resign to rest. He left to officially run for President of the United States. He spent his life blurring the lines between real political power and television fame. Yet neither of those mighty empires could shield him from the ultimate heartbreak. She was discovered completely by accident on a commercial flight next to a famous actor. Before she became a ruthless legal mind, Angela Harmon was an international fashion model. At 26, she joined the cast to play Assistant District Attorney Abby Carmichael. She deliberately wore stiff, conservative suits to force audiences to listen to her legal arguments rather than stare at her body. Her fierce on-screen persona perfectly mirrored her real-world conservative beliefs, making her a formidable presence. But a television prosecutor's absolute power means nothing in reality. In early 2024, an everyday grocery delivery driver shot and killed her beloved dog at her family home in North Carolina. Local police quickly closed the investigation, citing self-defense. They filed absolutely no criminal charges against the shooter. The woman who spent years sending fictional murderers to prison was forced to watch a real-life killer walk away free without a single trial. She built a formidable television legacy by executing perfect justice, only to learn that the real world harbors cruelties that no courtroom can ever fix. You probably remember him as the smooth detective who perfectly balanced the legendary Lenny Briscoe. Before he became a household name, Benjamin Bratt was building a quiet resume in independent action films. At 31, he stepped into the massive role of Detective Ray Curtis. By 1999, he was dating a global movie star and holding an Emmy nomination. He could have easily signed a contract extension to make millions of dollars. Instead, he simply walked into the producer's office and quit. There was no bitter dispute or hidden scandal behind his sudden departure. The grueling 14-hour shooting schedules in New York were stealing time from his family in San Francisco. He completely abandoned the most coveted job on television just so he could eat dinner with his loved ones. Thousands of actors would trade their souls for his level of television power, but he proved that true success sometimes means knowing exactly when to walk away from the spotlight. He was a classically trained opera singer. He was an accomplished bronze sculptor. Before he became the ultimate on-screen tough guy, Paul Sorvino possessed the soul of a true artist. At 52, he joined the cast as Sergeant Phil Terrata. He had just terrified audiences globally as a mafia boss in Goodfellas. But the commanding police sergeant abruptly asked to leave the hit show after just 31 episodes. There was no behind-the-scenes drama. The freezing New York winter streets and 14-hour shooting days were severely damaging his vocal cords. He willingly abandoned one of the most lucrative jobs on television. He did it simply to protect his ability to sing classical music. The entertainment industry constantly tried to trap him inside the body of a violent mobster. He proved that a giant man can be driven entirely by the delicate notes of an aria. He walked away from his contract safely to sing. But when a young female prosecutor asked to leave the show, the writers handed her a much more brutal exit. A devastating car crash on national television actually hid a much colder business reality. Before she wore sharp designer suits, Jillian Hennessy was surviving by busking with her guitar in suffocating New York subway stations. At 24, she landed the massive role of Assistant District Attorney Claire Kincaid. She spent 3 highly successful seasons representing the strict, uncompromising side of the law. Then she made a remarkably risky career move. She actively asked to be released from her lucrative television contract to pursue independent movies and her forgotten passion for folk music. The producers answered her resignation request with a brutal drunk driving accident. They intentionally killed off her beloved character in the final moments of season 6. It was a calculated twist designed to guarantee she could never return to the franchise. Her desperate plea for personal artistic freedom accidentally birthed one of the most traumatizing executions in 90s television history. He broke television boundaries as a brilliant legal mind. He represented justice on primetime television. He was a pioneering intellectual figure in a legendary courtroom. At 27, Richard Brooks became Assistant District Attorney Paul Robinette. He spent 3 seasons building a culturally significant character. Then, network executives fired him for a cold demographic calculation. NBC ordered producers to add female cast members to boost ratings. The network simply erased his groundbreaking role to chase numbers. Instead of holding a bitter public grudge, he kept his private life completely hidden. He quietly built a massive acting resume across decades. Then he executed a brilliant creative revenge. He returned to the show years later as a defense attorney. His new character actively fought against the exact legal system he once represented. The network discarded him for a demographic statistic. He responded by walking back into their courtroom and dominating the screen from the opposite side. Her commanding television appearance hid a deeply uncomfortable network secret. At 40, S. Epitha Murkerson took the role of Lieutenant Anita Van Buren. She became the longest-running original cast member in the entire franchise. Before leading the toughest detectives in New York, she entertained children on a hit kids show. She actually played a singing mail lady for years. She spent 17 consecutive seasons breaking television barriers. She was a fierce, authoritative police commander. Network executives forced her into a quiet, degrading compromise. They deemed her natural sister locks unprofessional for a high-ranking female officer. She had to wear a restrictive wig for 395 episodes. She hid her true heritage to appease the conservative studio heads. She endured this daily humiliation during an era when Hollywood heavily policed black hair. She silently carried the weight of this hidden identity while delivering powerful performances. She shattered massive glass ceilings on television for nearly 2 decades. Yet, she wore a daily disguise just to keep her hard-earned badge. He was the absolute epitome of New York cool. He wore perfectly tailored suits. He navigated the gritty city streets with effortless confidence. At 30, Jesse L. Martin joined the precinct as Detective Ed Green. He spent 9 seasons as a smooth, street-smart investigator. But his sophisticated television persona was actually an elaborate survival mechanism. He was born premature in the isolated Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. He spent his early childhood in extreme, unforgiving poverty. His family eventually relocated to Buffalo, New York. His heavy southern drawl immediately made him a prime target. The neighborhood children bullied him mercilessly every single day. A desperate teacher forced the young boy into an after-school drama program. She specifically wanted him to learn how to mask his accent. He needed to change his voice just to survive the schoolyard. He did not start acting out of a burning artistic passion. He learned to perform simply to hide his true identity from cruel classmates. He turned the desperate survival skills of a terrified boy into the ultimate armor of a confident television protector. He spent his youth battling a paralyzing stutter that terrified him into silence. Before he became an articulate legal mind, Samuel Waterston fought just to speak clearly. At 53, he took the legendary role of prosecutor Jack McCoy. He was already a highly respected theater actor with an Oscar nomination. He spent 19 seasons delivering brilliant closing arguments that captivated millions. But he actually struggled to memorize those massive television speeches. Directors secretly hid his script pages behind the wooden witness stands. He discreetly read from those hidden cheat sheets for his entire career. He finally stepped away from the show in 2024. He completed exactly 400 episodes. The mayor of New York officially gave him the key to the city for his fictional service. The man who once feared his own voice managed to become the most recognizable sound of justice in American television history. You probably remember him as the grumpy, pragmatic leader who constantly demanded plea deals. Before he became the ultimate authority figure, Stephen Hill was a brilliant but blacklisted actor. At 68, he took the role of District Attorney Adam Schiff. He spent his early career fighting an impossible industry standard. In the 1960s, he starred in a massive hit spy series. But he was an Orthodox Jew who strictly observed the Sabbath. He absolutely refused to work on Friday nights or Saturdays. The network aggressively fired him for his religious devotion. He spent decades wandering in television obscurity. When Law and Order hired him, they finally accommodated his sacred schedule. He spent 10 seasons dominating the screen without ever compromising his faith. The industry tried to punish him for his religious devotion, but he eventually found a courtroom that respected his beliefs as much as his talent. In the winter of 2004, a beloved New York icon filmed his final scenes in agonizing pain. Jerome Orbach was 57 when he became the legendary detective Lenny Briscoe. He had already conquered the theater world with a prestigious Tony Award. He even voiced a famous singing candlestick for a classic animated film. He brought a sharp, authentic grit to the police precinct for 12 consecutive seasons. But he solved fictional murders while secretly fighting a much more personal battle. Doctors quietly diagnosed him with prostate cancer in 1994. This was just weeks after his massive television debut. He hid his terminal illness from the press and the public for an entire decade. He endured grueling hormone treatments entirely out of the spotlight. He returned to the freezing streets of New York every single morning. He never complained or demanded special accommodations from the crew. By late 2004, the aggressive disease had completely metastasized. He still refused to stop working. He pushed his failing body to film 2 complete episodes for a brand new spin-off series. His voice barely held together during those final camera takes. His physical strength finally surrendered just days later on December 28th. He was 69 years old. The man spent his entire life entertaining millions of people. He refused to let the curtain drop until he had absolutely nothing left to give. He was fired from a hit television series simply because of a corporate gender quota. Before he became the ultimate surviving commander, Dan Florek was a working actor trying to keep his badge. At 40, he originated the role of Captain Donald Cragen. He spent 3 successful seasons building the precinct's foundation. Then network executives abruptly terminated his contract in 1993. They needed to clear space for female characters to boost ratings. But his embarrassing dismissal paved the way for a massive television triumph. He returned to the exact same universe 6 years later to lead a brand new spin-off. He spent the next 15 years dominating prime time on Special Victims Unit. He starred in over 300 episodes. The network once discarded him as a disposable asset. He responded by outlasting nearly every single executive who originally signed his termination papers. That signature 2-note gavel strike still echoes through television history, but the sound carries a much heavier burden now. We watch them deliver flawless justice on screen while they fought impossible battles in the shadows. The entertainment industry demanded absolute perfection, forcing them to hide their private grief, their cultural heritage, and their fading health just to keep their primetime badges. In the end, television offers the comforting illusion of perfect law and order, but life rarely allows anyone to write their own final verdicts. Which of these hidden off-screen struggles changed how you view this precinct the most? Thank you for watching Golden Star Moments. If you enjoy meaningful moments, inspiring stories, and unforgettable highlights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest videos. Every subscription motivates us to continue creating and sharing even more quality content with you. We look forward to seeing you in our next amazing journey. Golden Star Moments, where every shining moment becomes a lasting memory.